For nearly a century, Eastman Kodak was synonymous with photography. From family albums to professional studios, their yellow boxes dominated the market. By 1976, Kodak was an undisputed titan, commanding an astonishing 90% of film sales and 85% of camera sales within the United States. This near monopoly created immense wealth and employment, peaking at 145,300 global employees in 1988. It was a corporate empire built on a chemical process, seemingly unshakable, yet unknowingly, the seeds of its own disruption were already being sown deep within its own research labs. Kodak's market dominance translated directly into a staggering valuation. In 1996, the company reached its peak, valued at an incredible $31 billion. Just 4 years later, in 2000, Kodak reported peak annual revenues of $14.5 billion. This was a company operating at a scale almost unimaginable today for a single consumer photography brand. Yet, even as it celebrated these record-breaking numbers, a technology it had birthed decades prior was slowly, inexorably, beginning to chip away at the very foundations of its business model. The irony is profound and ultimately tragic. The year was 1975. In a Kodak lab, electrical engineer Stephen Sasson was tasked with a peculiar challenge: build an all-electronic camera. What he delivered was nothing short of revolutionary. This prototype, cobbled together from spare parts including a Super 8 movie camera lens and a portable cassette recorder, wasn't just a gadget, it was the world's first self-contained digital camera. It captured images without film, an innovation that directly threatened Kodak's core business, yet emerged from its own intellectual engine. Sasson's invention was groundbreaking, but its capabilities were rudimentary by modern standards. It captured black and white images at a mere 0.01 megapixel resolution. The process was painstakingly slow. It took a full 23 seconds to capture a single image, which was then recorded onto a cassette tape. Playback required a custom device to display the image on a television. Despite these limitations, its existence alone was a monumental achievement, proving the feasibility of a film-free future. It was a harbinger of a profound technological shift. When Stephen Sasson presented his digital camera to Kodak management, his presentation wasn't just about the technology, it was a stark warning about the future. He explicitly stated that digital photography would eventually replace film. This wasn't a hypothetical threat, it was an internal prophecy delivered by the very person who had forged the instrument of change. The insight was clear, the implications profound, yet the corporate response revealed a deep-seated denial that would ultimately prove catastrophic for the company. Kodak management's reaction to Sasson's groundbreaking invention and prescient warning was famously dismissive. Their initial response: "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." This statement encapsulates the core of Kodak's tragic failure. They recognized the invention's novelty but simultaneously suppressed its revolutionary potential, not out of ignorance, but out of a paralyzing fear. It was a conscious choice to protect the present rather than invest in the future, a decision that sealed their eventual fate. The reluctance to embrace digital stemmed from a classic corporate dilemma: the fear of cannibalizing a highly profitable core business. Kodak's film division was a cash cow, generating immense profits with little competition. Introducing a film-free camera would directly undermine this lucrative empire. Management feared that promoting digital would accelerate the decline of film, rather than secure a new future. This internal conflict between short-term profits and long-term survival became a textbook case of the innovator's dilemma, ultimately paralyzing the company. Despite their hesitation, Kodak's engineers continued to push the boundaries of digital technology. In 1986, just 11 years after Sasson's prototype, Kodak scientists developed the world's first megapixel sensor. This 1.4 megapixel device was a quantum leap from the original 0.01 megapixel. It proved Kodak still possessed unparalleled technical expertise in imaging science. This achievement underscored their capacity not just to invent, but to rapidly advance the very technology they were simultaneously afraid to fully commercialize, a deeply ironic dichotomy. Kodak did eventually dip its toes into the commercial digital market, albeit cautiously. In 1991, they released the DCS-100, the first commercially available digital SLR. This pioneering camera was essentially a modified Nikon F3 body fitted with a Kodak digital back, showcasing an impressive 1.3 megapixel sensor. However, its prohibitive price tag ranging from $13,000 to $20,000 positioned it exclusively for photojournalists and niche professionals, deliberately avoiding the mass consumer market that might threaten film sales. It was a digital camera, but not a digital revolution for the masses. Against all odds, and despite its internal conflicts, Kodak found itself a leader in the nascent digital camera market. By 2001, Kodak held the #1 market share in the US for digital cameras, largely thanks to its user-friendly EasyShare line. These cameras, launched between 2001 and 2005, were designed for simplicity, easy docking, instant printing, and straightforward emailing. This period demonstrated that Kodak could indeed innovate and lead in the digital space. But this leadership was built on a dangerously unsustainable foundation. The success of EasyShare masked a critical strategic flaw. Kodak's digital camera business operated on razor-thin margins. To compensate, the company shifted its profit strategy to selling printer ink, mirroring the printer industry's razor-and blades model. This meant the cameras themselves were essentially loss leaders. This approach proved disastrous. As competitors flooded the market with cheaper cameras and printing habits changed with the rise of digital sharing, Kodak's ink-dependent model failed to generate sufficient profits, undermining its digital leadership. Perhaps Kodak's greatest oversight was its failure to anticipate the Internet's profound impact on photo sharing and distribution. While they focused on printing, the world was rapidly moving towards digital platforms. The intrinsic value of a digital image was no longer just in its printability, but in its shareability across networks. Kodak was perfectly positioned to dominate this space, having invented the core technology, but its strategic vision remained anchored in a physical, print-centric world, allowing new entrants to define the digital future. The year 2007 brought a seismic shift. Apple launched the iPhone, equipped with a 2-megapixel camera. This wasn't just a phone, it was a connected device that made a standalone digital camera increasingly redundant for the average consumer. The iPhone integrated communication, computing, and photography seamlessly, offering instant sharing and convenience. Kodak, with its bulky cameras and print-focused strategy, was utterly blindsided by this convergence, losing ground rapidly to a device that hadn't even existed in the camera market just months prior. The definitive moment underscoring Kodak's lack of foresight arrived in 2010 with the launch of Instagram. This app, built entirely around mobile photo sharing and social networking, exploded in popularity. Crucially, Kodak had the opportunity to acquire Instagram for $1 billion but famously declined. Just 2 years later, Facebook purchased Instagram for $1 billion. This rejection of a mobile-first, social sharing platform, especially given Kodak's own history of imaging innovation, represented a monumental strategic blunder, costing them an opportunity to reclaim relevance in the digital age. By 2012, the cumulative effect of strategic missteps, technological obsolescence, and a crippling debt load became insurmountable. On January 19, 2012, Eastman Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was a somber end for a company that had once defined an entire industry. The collapse was not due to a lack of talent or technology, but a failure of leadership to pivot, to truly embrace the digital future it had itself pioneered. The innovator's dilemma had claimed another giant. Kodak eventually emerged from bankruptcy in 2013, but as a shadow of its former self. The company shed most of its consumer imaging products, including digital cameras, focusing instead on commercial printing solutions, packaging, and enterprise services. It was a strategic retreat, a desperate attempt to find new relevance by leveraging its remaining patents and expertise in industrial processes. The yellow box was gone, replaced by a much more specialized, less visible industrial player. The brand that brought photography to the masses had effectively exited the mass market. The story of Kodak is a poignant cautionary tale about the perils of corporate inertia and the innovator's dilemma. They invented the future, understood its implications, but were ultimately paralyzed by the very success of their past. Their failure wasn't a lack of technological capability, but a failure of strategic imagination and organizational courage. It highlights that innovation isn't just about invention, it's about the willingness to disrupt your own profitable business models, even if it means cannibalizing your past successes, to secure a future.